Alright everybody, welcome back to another Destiny 2 video on the TWAB, aka This Week at Bungie, aka Where TWAB. And I'm once again joined alongside G3 Tyrant.
What up, what up?
And Pistachio.
Yo.
Yes. We have quite a long TWAB to go through, so we're just going to dive right in. They say this week at Bungie, they have written a short novel about the upcoming weapon sandbox changes. So they said, let's keep the conversations about the live game short and sweet. It's been an interesting week, to say the least. Master difficulty for the Vow of Disciples has kicked off, and with just a few weeks left before the Guardians claim their raid titles, Grandmasters continue to push the limits of player skill, build crafting, and general gameplay strategy. Iron Banner has come and gone, but the Trials of Osiris returns this Friday with some light changes to post-flawless experiences. There's still quite a bit to do, and especially if you're trying to finish off each fresh triumph released with the Witch Queen and Season of the Risen. All that said, we're having a good time, and they hope we are too. They said even with a solid launch in their sales, the winds of change will always catch up to Destiny. As mentioned, they'll be talking about how those winds are shifting in the sands of the weapons in the sandbox. Some of you know that the Destiny sandbox like the back of your hand in some cases well enough to rely on a 45-minute video about the intricacies of a shotgun. Well, we do have some changes ready for you. They say they've been known to recommend grabbing a drink of water or a large snack before larger TWABs, and this is no different. So take this at your own pace, have a great time, and everyone get ready with your water, because we're going to have to hydrate. I added that last little part in. They say, that's a big sandbox. In a few short sentences, they'll be passing the mic over to staff designer Chris Proctor. Chris joins them today as a representative of the team, speaking to a few hundred bullets of the sandbox patch notes that were developed by a ragtag guardian here at the studio. Each of them contributed many hours of their time to get these changes prepped and ready for Season 17, which begins May 24th. They're expecting Crucible strategies to shift a bit in just the next few short weeks. For those that aren't in tune with the intricacies of the Destiny sandbox, this will be a lot to take in. You might need to take a break for a fellow community member to break down some of these changes for them to be less daunting, and from a high level, they're covering the following today. A handful of goals from the team, Glaives, commentary on their design, and some plans for future tuning. Flinch and Airborne Gameplay and how they're pushing these into build crafting. Tuning one-hit kills in the Crucible. General tuning for special ammo, exotic weaponry, legendary archetypes, and a slew of weapon perks. So, to get right into it, Chris Proctor says, "G'day, Guardians. In Season 17, the Sandbox team is making changes across all aspects of the Sandbox to improve the player experience of PvP. Here are a few of the team's goals to support that. Introduce levers to tune how players build for Airborne Gunplay. Destiny has extremely fluid and expressive airborne movement, but that movement must also be balanced against ground players lest it become oppressive. They said they want players who enjoy that playstyle to still be able to build into it, but they'll have to make a tough choice about what they leave behind to do so. So successfully engaging in air will no longer be as simple as put on an Icarus grip mod, but the upside for heavily investing in it will be higher. Allow players to mitigate for flinch. Excessive flinch is a frequent complaint from players, most importantly when using primary weapons and taking large chunks of damage from enemies. Players should be able to invest in Flinch Resistance, and the baseline flinch should be lower on primary weapons, but hand-tuned per archetype so that the weapons need Flinch Resistance that have the easiest access to it. They say, reduce the number of one-shot kills in PvP. The Sandbox overall wants to reduce the number of one-hit kills in PvP, shifting combat more towards primary gunplay. The weapons, this means tuning special weapons, both effectiveness of specific weapons and special weapon uptime overall, and one key primary outlier. They say they address common feedback on weapons across all game modes. Each season, the weapon team looks at legendary and exotic weapons that are over or underperforming and makes adjustments. Season 17 will be a larger pass than usual, with more of a focus on the underused weapons and PvP balance. With the goal stated, they said let's get right into the meat of all of it. First up, the Glaives. They've noticed that several aspects of how Glaives interact with weapons and armor perks don't match player expectations, and want to take some time to clarify the intent. The changes included in Season 17, and the logic that they'll use for future changes. A Glaive Melee is a basic melee attack, not a weapon attack, doesn't consume ammo, deals kinetic damage, so it's more like an unpowered punch than a sword swing. Although it is a hell of a lot stronger than the sword swing because it doesn't take up the ammo, and it kills really efficiently. I feel like it's much stronger than my punch. Or maybe it just feels like that because you're slicing. I don't know.
Yeah, yeah, I don't know about that one. Like, coming from a warlock, the chance of me killing somebody with an unpowered punch, let's just laugh at that one.
Yeah.
The glaive, when I did it for for whatever challenge, like, it was definitely a lot more useful.
Yeah.
So yeah.
They say allowing buffs to weapon damage to apply to glaive melees would be too powerful for something without an ammo limitation, particularly in PvP where even a small damage buff would allow for incredibly fast 2-hit kills. Also, in general, they'd prefer to increase glaive melee damage directly, as we're doing, in fact, they say. So instead of effectively making the weapon damage perks mandatory on glaives. So it's like, yeah, you might, if you don't have rampage on, you might as well not have it. It's kind of idea. They're trying not to have that happen. So glaives have already have a long lunge distance, and increasing this at all results in unreliable behavior over the network, so no melee lunge distance buffs apply to glaive melees. Their intent is that glaive melee should activate perks that trigger off base melee damage or kills. For example, ammo refill from a grave robber, damage weapon buff stacks ×5 for swashbuckler, or ammo refill from sealed Ahamkar grasps. Glaive melees should not activate perks that trigger off of powered melee damage or kills that will require spending subclass energy, such as a combination blow or assassin's cowl. I agree, that should cost ammo for that. Glaive melees should benefit from melee damage buffs, such as Winter's Guile or Wormgod Karis. And the glaive melees should not benefit from weapon damage buffs, such as Rampage, Kill Clip, and Swashbuckler. Glaive projectiles should benefit from the weapon damage buffs. So yeah, your Rampage, your Kill Clip, and your Swashbuckler only affects the projectile, not your actual melee. Which is fair because it doesn't consume any ammo. So it would be a little bit cracked just to be running around infinitely hitting with 5x Swashbuckler on everything. So they say, with that expectation set, there are some inconsistencies with how they are implemented in the game, and some of which they've already fixed, some of which they'll look at in the future. Once they have these guidelines consistently implemented in-game, they may look at specific cases where this doesn't match player expectations and do something custom, updating the descriptions where needed for clarification. But their primary goal is that players are able to predict how a glaive interaction will work. So, here's what they've changed during Season 16, the current season, largely bug fixes that will, with some quality of life changes. The glaive projectile hit to reach maximum energy decreased from 6 to 4. The glaive melee can now be interrupted by a hunter dodge. The grave robber perk now pulls from the reserve on the glaive instead of generating ammo. Glaive no longer gets stuck in the clang recovery when using a melee attack on each other. The sealed Ahamkar.
The clang?
Yeah, that's what it says. Stuck in the clang recovery when using the melee attack on each other. Like, so you know when you like when it reloads and you push it in, it like falls off or something when the melee hits.
Yeah, I was a little confused. I was like, what is this guy talking about?
They say the sealed Ahamkar grasps no longer reload the glaive on projectile hits, but does this on melee hits as expected. The glaive melee can no longer stun lock high health combatants, and the glaive melee kills are now tracked in match history for bounties and so forth. Here's what's changing in Season 17. They're pushing Glaives deeper into the roles of hard-hitting melee damage and near-complete protection when shielded, as well as increasing projectile speed to make them more reliable at range. Note the Glaive shield grants 97.5% damage resistance in PvE and 75% in PvP. They increase the melee damage against PvE enemies, except for bosses and vehicles, by 25%. So this is coming in Season 17. Reduced energy drain while shielded by 30%. Increased projectile speed dependent on the range stat. So at 0, it's increased from 30 to 60. And at 100, it's increased from 80 to 100. So
I think, honestly, that's what it needed the most. It's just the projectile speed. It's really slow.
I also thought the
So
drain speed was a little heavy on the shield. Because they mentioned, like... Well, like, when they were showcasing the Glaive, they're like... And, like, when they were talking about it before Witch Queen dropped, they're like, you pull out... Your friend's ghost is out there, you pull out the Glaive, you pull out the shield, you walk to go get it. Try doing that in anything above regular difficulty. Those Knight's cannons are going to wipe that shield so fast, and it's going to drain so fast that you are not going to be able to do that. So,
well, then now I'm curious how that's going to affect the PvP portion of the game, because honestly, like, if you can go on a run with that Glaive, you can do some gnarly things, man.
Well, they said the damage resistance for PvP is only 75%. And the PvE one is 97.5, which is pretty high. Yeah. I wonder why they needed to knock it 2.5% off the 100. I wonder why. That's kind of funny.
Probably nuking people for no reason.
Yeah. They say, this is also next season, the exotic Glaives have all been buffed, thank God. In addition to the global Glaive buffs mentioned earlier, making it easier to build up energy, and the speeds, and all the ones that they mentioned earlier. They said the Titan Glaive, players now get a Void Overshield while inside the bubble, and the Helm of Satan 14 now applies to this bubble as it does for Ward of Dawn. That's dope.
Oh, you aren't gonna like me when I start doing that. Ooh, that sounds dangerous.
Yeah. The Warlock Glaive increased speed and acceleration of the healing turret projectiles, and for the Hunter, tripled the damage of the wave of detonation, increasing the number of enemies that can chain from 4 to 8. Now that I'll actually bust this thing back out and try to use it, because the damage was completely pointless. I do more with a fusion rifle and with less ammo, so it was really bad. And I was just like, there's no point in using this at all. So, triple damage, chains with more people. Now you got me intrigued. Especially if we're getting Arc too, and we can start chaining some stuff. Then I might be having some fun.
Yeah, boy.
So now they want to talk about global changes. First up, Flinch. Aim detection on receiving damage, typically called Flinch, is a common pain point, particularly on primary ammo weapons. They've rebuilt the stability weapon stat to grant flinch resistance in addition to its other effects, with a maximum flinch resistance of 10% to 25% depending on weapon archetypes. With this change, players can build for flinch resistance more easily on weapons that feel flinch more than others, and less so on special weapons, which they don't want to be easier to use when under fire. From internal playtests, you may not feel the difference when using just one source of flinch resistance, but when stacking 2 or more sources, the benefit is strong. Note that higher zoom weapons are more affected by flinch, which they did take into account when tuning these numbers. So here's a breakdown for flinch resistance with 100 stability. 25% on auto rifles, submachine guns, and bows. 20% on pulse rifles, scout rifles, sidearms, and machine guns. 15% on hand cannons and trace rifles. 10% on fusion rifles, shotguns, snipers, grenade launchers, both breach and drum. Linear fusion rifles, both heavy and special, and rockets. Note that a stability stat below 20 will technically have a small flinch resistance penalty, but only around 5 weapons have a stability stat in that range. They say, mentioning here, because it's related to change, the resilience character stat now grants flinch resistance of 0% at 0 and 10% at 100. So you get an extra
What
10%.
you're saying is, I need to go back to 100%.
Yeah, you get a 10% flinch resistance stat. So for PvP, for you, then you kind of want that.
Yeah. Especially now that pulse rifles are gonna get a higher stat of like reduced flinch, I might go back.
Yeah. They say examples. Note that sources of flinch resistance stack multiplicatively. So a 100 stability stat Suros pulse rifle with a Suros synergy active, a 10 resilience, no distractions, and 2 unflinching pulse rifle armor mods while buffed by a rally barricade. When it all multiplies, it equals 90% flinch resistance. A 70 stat hand cannon, 5 resilience, and 1 unflinching hand cannon armor mod results in 39% flinch resistance. So they're just showing you how you can stack it differently to achieve a better flinch resistance. So yeah, I mean, having the Suros synergy thing on the Suros weapons for PvP is pretty fucking huge. Getting that flinch resistance and stability is really nice. So
yeah,
I mean, I always rock 2 unflinching mods, generally speaking, as well. So
I only rock 1 per weapon. So
I do 1 per weapon, but for now that the resistance is even higher on energy weapons, it's like maybe it's just not even worth using. Maybe I'll just do double primary now. Considering that's where most of my battles are anyways, but that's just for me. They want to talk about Airborne Gunplay. Before getting to build crafting, they've made a fundamental change to the modifiers applied while airborne. Your primary weapons will have less randomness in the projectile accuracy. In most cases, you'll have less aim assist instead. You will need precise aiming to land your shots without building heavily into airborne. So they've added a new weapon stat called Airborne Effectiveness, which is present on all weapons except those where airborne doesn't have any effect, swords for example, which maps onto aspects of airborne gunplay while using these guidelines. So with little to no investment, a 0 to 30 airborne stat, a character will have a small accuracy penalty than retail, but will have a significantly lower aim assist. They say with a minimal investment, a 31 to 50 airborne stat, characters will have around the same in-air accuracy as Icarus-equipped weapons do currently, with a noticeably lower aim assist. They say with a substantial investment, 51 to 70 airborne stat, a character will have a better accuracy than a retail weapon with Icarus, with fewer misses due to randomness, but with reduced aim assist. And then with very specialized investment, a 71 to 99 airborne stat, a character will have no airborne accuracy penalties with very slightly less aim assist. And with a full investment of 100 airborne stat, character will have no airborne accuracy penalty and the same aim assist. So looks like there's going to be a whole new bag of worms coming in to the weapons.
Yeah, the weapons are definitely getting a massive shakeup from what it sounds like.
Yeah, they could have to see what the stats are on each weapon sort of deal. But, like, I'm kind of down with that, like, because, yeah, like, I would rather be like, yo, I can't hit this guy because my aim sucks than I can't hit this guy because my bullets just decide to go out my gun and make a complete U-turn.
Yeah, that's...
Yeah.
Like, I'd rather just know that I'm trash at the game than have my bullets just spreading everywhere because, yo, you're in the air. Yeah, but, like, I'm also a top tree fucking solar warlock. Like, that's what I'm supposed to be. Yeah, but, like, you need to consume a nade.
Yeah, I don't like that. My shots miss due to randomness.
Better stability. Like, yo.
Yeah, I agree with like what both your sentiments, man. Because honestly, like the in-air randomness is why Icarus Grip is like a non-debatable thing to have on. Like if you didn't have Icarus Grip on, it's like why are you playing PvP, right? Like, it made the hand cannon meta that much stronger, right? Because it had you slap an Icarus grip on that bad boy, and like you can go to straight to Pound Town, and not a lot of people can stop you, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So
I don't know.
I feel like with the lower end of aim assist, which it's funny because we were just having this conversation the other day. Like I feel like Destiny's aim assist is really really high, like almost Halo high, and they need to like lower it a little bit in some shape or form.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. Just the way it is now, I just feel like it was just the only reason I'd use the top tree solar warlock is because of the dash. Like me jumping in air was just a death sentence.
Yeah,
Like because I can never land enough shots on somebody. So yeah, like I'm actually rather curious as to how this is all going to play out, and like if that's something I'll do just like when I'm playing Crucible just for fun sort of thing.
Yeah.
Mhm. Should
At
be
least until
interesting.
Solar gets its rework, then it might be viable and
Mm-hmm.
competitive Crucible, but
Yeah.
Void. Void.
Which is funny because you're the only person I know that prefers Void in PvP, especially over Solar.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I'd take Warlock over or I'd take Arc over anything because
Okay, yeah.
But
'Cause I love Arc. I'm just waiting for that rework.
yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Continue with the TWAB, my good friend. Sorry.
Yeah, let's move on here, though. Keep going, because it's still a lengthy TWAB we got ahead of us. They say this stat has been hand-tuned on all exotic weapons and everything that shipped in Season 16 or 17, and everything that's ever shipped as Trials of Osiris or Nightfall loot. Older weapons will have a default value and set per weapon archetype to a value just below the middle of the allowed stat range. Note this will be a hidden stat at the Season 17 launch, similar to the aim assist and recoil direction. You'll be able to check the stats on a specific weapon through the API, and in Season 18, several previously hidden stats will be visible on the weapon inspection screen. So that's pretty cool.
Nothing new there.
Yeah. They say this stat influences several aspects of Airborne Gunplay. Aim assist cone penalties, i.e. the auto-aim angle, reticle friction, and the adhesion angle, is a high penalty to this angle at a 0 stat and a low or 0 penalty at a 100 stat. The accuracy cone, which is penalty angle for primary weapons, a lower penalty currently at a 0 stat and a 0 penalty at a 60 to a 100 stat. And the accuracy cone for special weapons is a slightly lower penalty that currently at 0 and a 0 penalty at 100 stat. Headshot aim assists is 0 at 0, 1 degree at 100 stat on primary weapons, slug shotguns, linear fusion rifles, and machine guns, and 0.5 degrees on a sniper. This controls how forgiving headshots are while airborne. If this is 0, you must be pinpoint aiming precisely at the head to get the headshot. Otherwise, you'll get a body shot even if your aim assist cone overlaps the head. Previously, while airborne, players would get full aim assistance for headshots provided their aim assist cone overlapped the head at all. So the pellet shotgun spread angle plus 25% is at the 0 stat, and it's 0 at the 100 stat. So they said more shotgun spread at lower airborne effectiveness for the stat. They say what this means overall is that you'll get fewer misses due to randomness from the accuracy cone while airborne, but reliance on aiming is much higher at a low stat. To make this easier, you will need to build into airborne. With decent aim, you'll be able to land more body shots instead of crits. So they said before and after examples of accuracy cone penalties. So they say for the hand cannon, before it had a 0.667 degrees airborne accuracy penalty. Now after, at a 0% stat, it's going to have a 0.45 degree. And after 60 stat, it has a 0 degree penalty. So for snipers, before they used to get a 3 degree penalty. And now after, at 0 stat, it'll have a 2 degree penalty. At a 60 stat, it'll have a 0.8 degree penalty. And at a 100 stat, it'll get a 0 degree penalty. The Airborne Effectiveness stat that comes from 3 sources: weapon, subclass, and armor. The weapon's base Airborne Effectiveness stat with ranges varying from 0 to 10 and 0 to 30 depending on the weapon's archetype. Exotic weapons typically get bumped up. Example, the higher stat than legendary weapons in that archetype, unless they're already extremely strong. They say the Icarus Grip / Adept Icarus mod gives you a plus 15 Airborne Effectiveness. A certain weapon perks, such as the redesigned Air Assault, and the valid stat ranges for legendary weapons. Now, there's a lot of numbers going over on this next part. So what I'm going to do is just at this point tell you guys to head to the TWAB itself if you want to see the valid stat ranges for all of the legendary weapons, because it goes through all the archetypes, then it goes through the higher tiers of legendary weapons, then it goes through a bunch of the examples for exotic weapon outliers, it goes into some of the examples for hand-tuned legendary weapon stats, like very, very specific things, including something that's redacted that they aren't even showing on here yet. So if you want to see some of these numbers, just please come on here and take a look at all these, because there's still a lot to cover, and there is just way too many just random stats. I'd just be like, this weapon 6, this weapon 8, this weapon 5. You know, it's like I might bore you to sleep. So just come and take a look at this yourself, please.
Yeah, I honestly just hope that somehow this affects Chaperone in a very, very positive way. I'm sick and tired of that kind.
The Chaperone is getting is mentioned here, so.
Oh, okay, cool.
They say they are also going to be talking about subclasses like the Heat Rises ability, the Tempered Metal ability, the Whisper of the Hedrons. They have exotic armors as well, so please come on here and take a look at all of the stat bonuses, such as a like minus 50 to Stompees to all, so which means like that is a minus 50 to the range stat and or everything. So they're getting a bit of a nerf. Like there's a bunch of stuff coming on here. So they also have something redacted, and then they're talking about fusion rifles. So some sort of exotic piece of equipment that's coming next season buffs fusion rifles, so, or has something to do with fusion rifles, it looks like. So they say this means that in general, if you want good airborne effectiveness, say a 70 stat, you should pick a weapon with a high stat, put Icarus on it, and either put an exotic armor piece that helps it, or run a subclass aspect, fragment, or ability that gives you the best possible airborne effectiveness. And you'll generally have to go on all in on a weapon, exotic armor, and a subclass. They drop a few examples here, and then they go on to say that this is a big weapon system change, and they will be monitoring how it rolls out, and they expect to make adjustments post-ship. For fun, here are some graphs that show most used armor exotics across each class, and they'll be watching the data and feedback once these changes go live. So they have a graph here that talks about the hunter exotic usage and what doesn't really get used. I love how it's literally just they have an individual bar for everything, and then just one massive chunk is Stompees. Like everything else is just loaded on the side, and then right smack in the middle, huge Stompees.
No surprise to anyone.
Yeah. So
literally the bane of my existence.
Yeah, for real. So once again, go on to the TWAB, and I would go down and look at all of the. I need to scroll back down to it. All the graphs for each of the respective classes. The Titans surprisingly didn't get any big block that just took up a whole number, so it looks like you guys are fairly well balanced. And it looks like the Warlock, everybody uses the Ophidian aspect. Apparently that's it. So
I mean, they nerfed Dune Marchers, and we didn't really jump anyway. So.
Yeah. It looks like it's a lot of Lord Least Splendorly or something like that. Or the Mask of the Quiet One. So
Yeah, I could see that, I guess.
And then like the AC/DC feedback fence.
Which I rarely see. Lord Tyrion's the only person I know that actually uses it
I might be looking
religiously.
at the wrong color for that, but it says it's 100%. So
Wow, didn't see that coming.
yeah, but yeah, so go on to the 12 here to come check out all the stats here if you want to see all the exact number crunches. I am not the guy to break down all the weapon cones, the outliers, the what these percentages means. Like when they're talking about some exotic weapon outliers, when they say sweet business 27, I am not the guy to break that down and tell you what that means. So probably gonna have to check out Firing Range or something else on YouTube to break that all down for you. They say, but moving on here, they say the playlist weapons. The latest playlist weapons drops from Gambit, Crucible, and Strike completions. Older weapons are available from the vendor rank packages or can be focused. These weapons are intended to provide interesting drops for players who spend a lot of time in an activity, and while they wanted to keep the large perk pools to address that goal, they wanted to provide a way to reduce the duration of the chase for players who want a specific weapon. They also, since the older playlist weapons are still available as vendor rank up rewards, they want them to feel more relevant in a post-original trait world. So, playlist weapons now have a chance to roll with extra traits in one or both columns, increasing the number of ranks resets with that vendor during a given season. Note that the reputation reset each season. You'll need to play these activities each season to unlock the potential for extra points or extra perks. All playlist weapons from Beyond Light and later will drop with the appropriate origin trait. I do like that because I think the origin traits on the weapons are absolutely fantastic. So I think they're one of the best things that they've added.
I'm not gonna lie, I haven't really noticed.
Well, I mean, it's kind of crazy.
I mean, it could be doing wonderful things for me, and I'm just like whatever about it. So
Yeah, that's fair. Moving on from there, they say the stat display update. Following a recent change to show numbers for all stats instead of just bars, they've opted to change the stat display on weapons to clearly reflect their capabilities. All weapon stat bars now range from 0 to 100 instead of being limited to some range in the middle of the bar. This change eliminates rounding with any other errors, and particularly on adept weapons, masterworks, and enhanced traits. They would convey a bounds. It better conveys the bounds of a weapon stat that can exist within, and this is purely a display change. No weapon behaviors have changed, and you should expect all existing weapon stat bars to look slightly different. The one-hit kills and special ammo. There are several damage.
oh, this is a big one.
There are several damage buffs external to weapons that allow weapons to one-hit kill without much investment, such as an aggressive sniper rifle with a high-impact reserve, an Ariana's Vow, or a Land Monarch. Specifically, when combined with an external 20% damage buff, an example, an Empowering Rift can give many snipers a one-hit body shot capability in the Crucible, which a one-shot body shot with a sniper is absolutely ridiculous.
Seriously, I mean, I could do it too with the new helmet, but
Yeah.
I don't know.
Most of these are...
You have standards.
I do. I really do.
There you go. See, most of these use the same buff under the hood, so they just adjusted them all at once. With these changes, it's going to be much rarer to get a one-shot kill with a weapon that typically wouldn't allow it. So they reduced the damage bonus for Empowering Rift, High Energy Fire, and Inertia Override from 20% to 15%. Only in PvP. This is not affected in PvE. In addition,
I don't even feel like inertia override really. Like, I get it. Like, it did give you significant damage, but the proc inertia override was not.
well, it gives you the same. They're all in the. They said that's all in the same thing.
I dig it. Yeah. All right. I'm not gonna complain.
They say, in addition, they want special ammo to be less plentiful, making it more difficult to chain special weapon kills. So they disabled ammo scavenger armor mods in PvP. Ooh, there. That's what we're talking about. So no matter how much health a player was carrying on death, if you pick up a special brick, you only get 1 ammo for a shotgun or a sniper. And retuned several special weapon archetypes and exotics, see below, with the general goal of reducing the effectiveness and uptime of special weapons. So moving on here, they want to talk about archetypes. Special weapons, in particular shotguns and fusion rifles, are responsible for more one-hit kills than they'd like in PvP. They still want them to be an option, but less ubiquitous. Nope. Ubiquitous.
Bro, you trying to say a word? Right?
I'm trying to. Stop interrupting me.
Ubiquitous?
Yeah, I was saying it, and then he said, "Are you all right?" And I was like, "I'm literally trying to say it." Ubiquitous.
I'm sorry.
You read the TWAB. Go ahead. You read the TWAB.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead. Go. You read the TWAB, bro. Go ahead.
Nah, dog. I'm good. I'm chilling.
Sorry for trying to read a new word that I've never seen before in my life. Okay, sorry. Excuse me.
Yeah.
Will have less effective, multiple ranges, and with lower uptime. So they have a graph here. Pictured is the special weapon usage in the Crucible broken out by archetype. And shotgun is just right smack there. Just a thick boy. But the fusion rifle is also at the top. Fusion rifle is completely at the top with complete consistency. So...
spawned into a few of those.
It's funny because the sniper rifles are actually the lowest tier out of all of them. So interesting.
Because that takes skill.
Not with a one-shot body shot, but aside from that, yes.
But I mean, if they're reducing that, so
yeah. So it does because you do have to get the headshot.
You have to get a very particular roll.
Yeah, and they flinch like crazy. So.
Yeah,
I can see why they would make that choice.
Yeah. So they say special weapons here. All special weapons have had their in-air accuracy significantly reduced. While they are okay with encouraging players to build into using their primary weapons more effectively in the air, they do not believe that a prevalence of airborne one-hit kill options is good for PvP. Special weapons have a slightly larger airborne accuracy penalty than primary weapons at 0 airborne effective stat, reduced to 0 at a 100 stat. These special weapons have a similar airborne aim assist cone penalty to other weapons, around 50% at the 0 stat. This penalty can be reduced but not entirely removed by investing in airborne effectiveness. So sniper rifles are fairly slow and ready, stow and aim down sights, which has made snapshot feel mandatory for many players. So it's reduced stow, ready, and aim down sights by 10%, i.e. all snipers are now snappier. There's matching changes to snapshot below. Okay.
Unbelievable.
Sniper rifles have less access to ammo than shotgun and fusion rifles, where kills drop ammo right in front of you, so they think ammo scarcity will prevent snipers from spiking. I can understand where they're coming from for that.
They're still going to be prevalent.
Yeah, for sure. They say slug and pellet shotguns are still overwhelmingly popular in the PvP despite some recent changes, so they've touched them again with the goal of encouraging some diversity in special weapon choice. They're keeping an eye on this change since they've touched shotguns multiple times recently, and they'll adjust it if needed. With this change, they expect shotguns to have a shorter one-hit kill distance, but still be effective enough that a short kill ratio or a short range kill roll. This change reduces shotgun one-hit kill distance by around 0.5 meters. Because the importance of spread angle is just as high as damage falloff, this has not been touched. So they reduced damage falloff start and end by 1 meter. And they reduced the aim assist and magnetism falloff at start and end by 2 meters. Fusion rifle usage is trending pretty high, particularly in trials, and bringing shotguns down a little more would make them too good of an option. So they've made a global change with the changes 20 meters plus fusion rifle one-hit kills should be very uncommon through a combination of damage falloff and recoil changes. So they reduce the damage falloff near distance, so it's 2 meters at a 0 range and 1.3 meters at a 100 range. They reduced the damage fall off at a far distance at 1 meter to 0 range and a 1.3 meters at 100 range. And they reduced the recoil scalar variance between 0 and 100 stability. So 0 stability, it has an unchanged amount at 0.75, and the 100 stability increased from 0.5 to 0.55. They say they also have here another graph photo of fusion rifle usage broken down by name. So the Cartesian coordinate is at the top of the list, and coming in hot now is the Deliverance, because that's also but that was just recently obtained with the raid. So it's funny. Where's the and there's main ingredient and likely suspect. Likely suspect is also like right there too, because I believe you can craft that one, and that which is why I'm making it.
I have a god roll of it as well.
Yeah, so you can make that one pretty nice. But aside from that, the main ingredient has always been like right there as well.
It's also like the OG fusion rifle.
Yeah, seriously, it's been around since vanilla Destiny. It really has.
Pretty much.
So they said when they rebuilt the fusion rifles in Season 15, they wanted to differentiate these subfamilies dramatically from each other, which worked. Now that they've seen them in action for a couple seasons, they're pulling them back with extremes a little bit. With these changes for fusion rifle families, they are still very different from each other, but high impacts are stronger and rapid fires and precision should be a little bit less dominant. So high impacts, they reduced the unmodified high impact charge time from 1 to 0.96 seconds, and they increased the damage per burst by 10. Precision frames, they increased the unmodified charge time from 0.74 to 0.78. And for the rapid fire, they increased the unmodified charge time from 0.46 to 0.5, and they decreased damage per burst by 20. So the new charge time and damage per burst for all fusion rifles are as follows. The high impacts at 0.96 seconds at 330 damage. A precision at 0.78 seconds at 280 damage. An adaptive frame at 0.66 seconds with 270 damage. And a rapid fire at 0.5 seconds with 245 damage. So that should reduce the rapid fires killing you super quick and like one blipping, but it can potentially still one blip because 245 is still a one blip. So they're all capable of it, but at the same time, like there are the times have adjusted. So we'll see how that feels.
It's still gonna feel like
I still feel like there
absolutely.
people are going to delete you with the fusion rifles really quickly. So
yeah, like I doubt that's gonna help.
Yeah. They say besides the Divinity, trace rifles aren't as popular in hard content as they want them to be. Well, they particularly want damage type reworks of the oldest 3 trace rifles to have a chance to shine this season. They're also more affected by disabling scavenger armor mods than other special weapons. With this change, they're a better use of special ammo against non-red bar targets. So they increased trace rifle damage against non-red bar combatants by 20%, and they increased the ammo picked up per special ammo brick from 18 to 30. I like that because I agree. The trace rifles they feel lackluster, but they don't have to be. A lot of them are extremely fun. The Aegir Scepter is very fun on a stasis build, and actually the damage already was pretty strong on it. So, but just going back to like the earlier ones, the Prometheus Lens, that was a super fun one and really good for ad clearing, but it just didn't keep up with the damage.
I still enjoy using it, but yeah, like it's really only something that like it puts you in a weird spot because then like you can wipe out like all the small enemies no problem, but yeah, like once you get to somebody that's actually got a health bar, it's like, well, here goes all my ammo.
Yeah, and it costs the special ammo too, so it's not even like you have something in a primary slot to take down with primary ammo, with infinite ammo to do big chunks of damage. So I do like that. They're talking about primary weapons. They say auto rifles and pulse rifles aren't as competitive as they'd like at mid-range, and light lightweight pulse rifles are too hard to use to hit their optimal time to kill. With these changes, they're expecting auto rifles and pulse rifles to become better to compete with hand cannons in mid, long, and outranged at standard zoom submachine guns. I like that a lot because I like to use both auto rifles and pulse rifles. So talk to me.
Sounds like Chattering Bones getting a buff, brother Matt.
There's the auto rifles, the increased
Chattering
Bones. Yeah. So auto rifles, they increase damage fall off near distance by 0.75 meters. And for the pulse rifles, they increase the damage fall off near distance based on the range stat. So at the 0 range stat, it's increased from 15 to 16. And at 100 range stat, it's increased from 22 to 24. Note that this is the hip fire fall off distance and is multiplied by the zoom value to get the aim down sight's fall off distance. So the damage fall off for far distance shots remains 40 meters regardless of the range stat. They increased the lightweight, the 450 RPM pulse rifle damage per bullet from 15 to 16 with a 1.65 times precision scaler, and this will increase precision damage from 24.75% to 26.4. This won't change the optimal time to kill in PvP, but will reduce the number of crits required. Okay, so if I'm getting my headshots with it, it should feel good. So
that's what it sounds like.
They say zoom is too important a factor on a submachine gun, and submachine guns with low zoom don't feel competitive in PvP. So they've reduced the variance in zoom. They brought up the base zoom from 13 to 14 and extended the damage fall off distance. With this change, several standard zoom submachine guns will be more competitive, but this does make the inaccessible submachine gun the highest perk / trait RNG, the multi-mac, compete less with auto rifles, and it will no longer straight up outclass every other submachine gun in PvP. So they increased damage. They increased the damage fall off by 1.5 meters. They adjusted the zoom values on most viable legendary submachine guns and one exotic. So the Shayura's Wrath went from 17 to 16. The multi-mac with max zoom scope went from 17 to 15. The second highest zoom will bring this to 14 instead. The stochastic variable is 13 to 14. Ikelos, just noting the change from the Witch Queen from 13 to 14. The 7th Seraph is going from 13 to 14. The Every Waking Moment is going from 13 to 14. And the Huckleberry is going from 13 to 15.
The Huckleberry.
They like adaptive submachine guns and are starting to make them again, but they are in their current form. They kill a little too fast with body shots, so they've reduced the body shot damage to increase their body shot time to kill by 1 bullet without impacting their optimal time to kill. So they decreased the body damage from 12 to 11.25, and they increased the precision multiplier from 1.35 to 1.44. The precision frame hand cannons have always been good while airborne, effectively having a built-in Icarus grip. And with the changes coming to the airborne functionality, they wanted to preserve that feel while translating their advantage to the new system. So Intrinsic switched from a 75% airborne accuracy penalty reduction to a plus 25 airborne effectiveness stat. This means that if you had a Frontier's Cry with an Icarus grip mod on it, that it would be at 19 plus 25 plus 15, which would be a 59 before factoring in any armor or subclass airborne effectiveness. So precision hand cannons are still going to feel pretty good when you're jumping in the air and whatnot. They're not going to be left out. And
too bad they don't feel good in any other regard.
Yeah. They say heavy weapons. Machine guns still aren't where they want them to be in PvE, so they're giving them an additional buff. But less so against bosses, where they are extremely long range and deep ammo reserves make them strong in too many rolls. With this change, they'll shred most enemies without stepping on top tier bosses' damage options. So they increased damage by 40% against PvE enemies. Let's go. 20% versus bosses. The Xenophage and the Grand Overture receive this buff, except for the bonus versus bosses. That makes sense.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, like the Xenophage was already super strong, so it didn't. I mean, even for boss damage phase, it's still very strong.
Yeah.
I got a few machine guns I might want to take a look at.
Yeah.
I've been waiting for this day.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Bring them out of the vault. Sword stats have been inconsistent for a while now, and they've tidied up all of these, mostly cosmetic. They fixed several inconsistencies in stats between different swords, and this has had no gameplay impact. They increased the charge rate of the Sola's Scar from 20 to 50 to match the Temptation's Hook. I didn't even realize it was different from the Temptation's Hook, so that's tough.
Neither did I.
The rocket launcher subfamilies weren't differentiated enough by the previous change, so they've made the differences more extreme. With this change, they expect there to be more of a marked trade-off for the intrinsic tracking on precisions and a greater benefit for other subfamilies, specific relative to the baseline. Example, the high-impact rocket launchers. So precision now have a minus 10% damage for both impact and detonation. Boo. High impacts receive no damage changes, and the adaptive and aggressive are getting a plus 10% in damage. I guess that's fair, because like how quickly people are just popping off like an auto loading tracking Hawkeye right now with the ice one, with the stasis one.
Ice one?
No, the stasis rocket launcher right now.
Oh, rocket launcher. Okay.
Yeah.
It's
the Palmaria or whatever, I believe.
Yeah.
So, and yeah, it's like people have the one that has the impact lasting impression or whatever, so it like hits you and then they have auto reload, just firing away.
Yo, honestly, lasting impression is so whack. Like, it might be good boss damage wise, but like for everything else, man, you fire it and like, dude, you can put your controller down, go make a coffee, come back, and then it finally detonates.
Yeah, it's pretty long. It does feel long sometimes. Yeah, it's funny.
You can fire it and be like, alright, cool, this dude's gonna blow up, so I'm gonna shoot these dudes over there, and the dude you hit with the rocket claps you.
Yep.
Why?
Yep.
Because he ain't blown up yet.
That's hilarious.
Exactly. So they want to talk about exotics. They say all exotics that shipped before the Forsaken release now have their kill trackers visible by default. Fighting Lion needed a bit more of a buff, so they improved its reload speed when Thin the Herd is active a couple of releases back. And now that they're increasing its blast radius and damage, with this change it should be easier to get the damage you need to trigger its perk. So they reverted the Season 15 Breach Grenade Launcher blast radius reduction, but just for the Fighting Lion. They also increased the damage by 5%. The Eyes of Tomorrow as a raid exotic ought to be better.
That thing's, like, in my eyes, that thing's been irrelevant since it's been put in the game. Like, maybe I've just missed the high point, but
I do remember it being very
love.
popular at one point.
It was one point in PvP because it was popping off for a bit, I think.
Yeah.
But it hasn't seen a lot of love.
Off in PvP.
So they say the Eyes of Tomorrow as a raid exotic ought to be better against tough PvE enemies. So they've increased the damage versus bosses and champions by 30%. I like that. They talk about the Leviathan's Breath. Always felt like it should absolutely wreck champions, and using it its first shot to stun an unstoppable champion without doing much damage felt bad. So Archer's tempo from its catalyst is significant on paper, but in practice that draw speed buff isn't as noticeable as they liked. Overall, they hope that these changes make it feel a bit better against all types of champions and other tough enemies in hard content. So the Archer's tempo perk from the catalyst now has an increased effect just on this weapon. The standard draw type scaler for the Archer's tempo is 0.75. It is now 0.625 on the Leviathan's Breath. They added a small delay before detonation on champions, mini-bosses, and bosses. This allows the impact to stun an unstoppable champion and the detonation to deal bonus damage against the stunned champion. damage changed to be more of an even split between impact and detonation, and increased damage across the board by 50%. Overall damage versus champions is roughly doubled, even more compared to shooting an unstunned, unstoppable champion. They say the Huckleberry had an underwhelming engagement range, and the updated zoom based on the change to the baseline submachine gun zoom. So they increased the zoom stat from 13 to 15. The experiment with pushing the Xenophage into a harder hitting but slower firing didn't pan out, so they increased the firing rate and adjusting the damage back to what it was. Oh, let's go.
Oh, Xenophage is back on the table, boys.
Yeah. They increased the firing rate from back to 120. They reduced the damage per bullet to match the previous, and this doesn't benefit from the Season 17 machine gun damage buff, which they already mentioned. They said they Le Monarque, au français, is too oppressive with combined and external damage buffs, but they felt it could be stronger in PvE. With this change combined, the damage buff change above, they've introduced a 60 resilience gate on killing a Guardian PvP with a crit while in an empowering rift or similar. So they reduced the poison tick damage versus players by 25%. And they changed poison damage type from burn to poison. This is largely housekeeping and not gameplay significant. Okay. And they increased poison tick damage versus AI by 50%. Let's go. Especially with volatile rounds, it's really good in PvE this season too.
Mm-hmm.
So I gotta say, like it, and with the versus AI, so like computers by 50%. Let's go. They say the Rent Driver can be difficult to fight against in PvP, in part because it does have a very high body shot damage. With this change, getting left super weak by a body shot should be less common, though they're keeping an eye on how much this change lands, and they may revisit it later. So they reduced the damage shot. They reduced the body shot damage against players by 20%. This will also prevent it from being a one-hit kill with a body shot while in an empowering rift. The body shot reverts to its old behavior when in the weapon's damage mode, and precision damage in any mode is unchanged.
Finally nerfing that piece of crap.
Yeah. The Skyburner's Oath.
What?
I know. Haven't heard that name in a long, long time, since the days of the old star system. Yes. They say it felt like it didn't have a niche, except for airborne memes. So they made a bunch of changes aiming to improve the ease of use and give it some more utility. So they increased the ADS projectile speed to 9,999. This projectile is now hit scan. Okay.
I feel like this is like a Final Fantasy joke just waiting to happen.
I know, right? Both ADS and hipfire are now 150 RPM. Hipfire projectiles no longer track, but arcs similar to a grenade launcher and has a larger detonation size than ADS. So you can't just lazily shoot it around anymore and have it auto track for you. Amazing. The hipfire detonation also applies as a burn to target. And the bonus range from the Masterwork has been rolled into a base stat of the weapon. The Masterwork now grants bonus reload instead. It also has the highest Airborne Effectiveness stat out of any weapon in the game, coming in at a 35. I want to talk about the last word. See, it plays very differently on mouse and keyboard than it does on controller, but the disparity doesn't need to be that large, so they're keeping an eye on this. So they reduced the mouse and keyboard recoil penalty from 33% to 22%. Oh, okay. That's it.
Alright.
The Arbalist is more dominant than intended in hard PvE content. No. Able to fill the anti-barrier role as well as shield break and boss damage. They've made a fairly small adjustment here, and they'll re-look at it again. So they reduced the damage against champions by 25%. It will still break barriers in one hit. It's just so that
He
it's.
just left it alone.
But I get what they're saying, because it literally was an all-in-one tool. You can just use it to break the shields and for the damage. It was that strong. So it's at least use it to break the shields and then swap to your rocket or something to pump out the damage. And that's what
I didn't play enough Destiny to enjoy the Arbalest in its glory.
No, should have. The Graviton Lance. The catalyst didn't help the weapon enough, and they wanted to give it a bit of a boost. This change gives it an interesting utility in PvE and PvP, particularly with the buff to exotic primary weapons that happened in the Witch Queen. So the catalyst changed from granting Hidden Hand to granting Vorpal Weapon and Turnabout.
Wow.
Vorpal Weapon on a that's a 20% buff because it's an energy weapon, right?
Yeah.
And then, although it's technically a primary, though. I mean, like, it doesn't use energy ammo, right? It uses primary ammo.
No, it does
It's just
not.
in the It's just in the void. It's in the
energy slot.
Energy slot
It's
because
in the
it's a
special
void.
weapon spot, but it uses kinetic.
So if it's a kinetic, it's technically kinetic then. So it should get a 30% buff for the Vorpal Weapon, and Turnabout is a very nice perk. Like if used in PvP or PvP, it can be. It gives a buff. So
I'm just more happy with Vorpal, to be honest.
Yeah. So they say
they're already dump trucks, people.
For real. They say the Grand Overtures most recent adjustment switched the missiles to fire in bursts of 5, which allowed for more granularity in unloading the damage. But sometimes you just want them all to fly out at once. So they reduced the time between bursts when in missile mode. Holding the trigger will now fire all the missiles in a continuous burst. Tapping it will fire the 5-round bursts. The Cold Heart. Arc damage type update. The Cold Heart's exotic trait is more or less it is a trace rifle. No longer fits in the world of legendary trace rifles. So to ease the ease of use on sustained damage was also pretty low. So the sustained damage that creates an ionic trace, and collecting an ionic trace grants energy to all of your abilities. And they increase the grace time before the damage ramp clears from 0.113 to 1 second. That's a big jump up in time. So I like that.
Seriously.
The Prometheus Lens. The solar damage type update, and this generally needed some tweaks to be viable. The sustained damage applies a more useful burn to the targets. The Wave Splitter. It's a void damage type update, and the power cycling mechanic was interesting but ultimately hard to capitalize on. So the power level no longer cycles randomly, and the default damage output is the same as the old middle tier. Picking up an orb of power now grants 10 seconds of maximum power and caps at 20 seconds, up from 5 and 10. It also now suppresses the target while granted this mode by picking up an orb. So when you pick up an orb, you also gain the ability to suppress targets. So that's pretty cool, actually. The Osteostriga's projectile somehow rotated by 90 degrees and looked a bit weird. The correct rotation on the projectile model is now activated. The Lord of Wolves is kind of a shotgun, but has its own custom tuning, and it wasn't impacted by the previous shotgun change. So they've reduced damage fall off, start and end by 25%.
That's fair.
Now, yeah. Now they're moving into perks. So they say where an enhanced perk exists and an adjustment is needed, it's been adjusted in the same way. Snapshot Sights has felt mandatory on snipers forever. And with the change to snipers, Snapshot will feel about the same, but without Snapshot, it should still feel a lot snappier. So they increased the ADS animation scaler from 0.5 to 0.75 for special ammo weapons, and for primary weapons, it is unchanged. Opening Shot has felt mandatory on shotguns forever, in large part to it gives a buff, in part of the buff as a damage fall-off scaler. This isn't something that they'd like on short-range weapons. You can still feel the range bump with this change unless range is already capped, but it won't let weapons push completely outside of their intended engagement ranges. So they removed the damage fall-off scaler. They increased the range stat bonus from 20 to 25, and other stats from this perk are unchanged. The Full Choke has been the go-to magazine perk forever. With this change, other magazines options should be more competitive. So they increased
You mean barrel perk?
Yeah, it's a barrel perk. It's full.
I think you said magazine. That's why I was like, what?
Oh, it says no. It says magazine perk here, full choke. But it is a barrel, isn't it?
Yeah. Unless you're talking about assault mag, they want to lower because that's the mandatory.
I was like, hold on, what happened to assault mag?
Yeah.
Well, they also say here smooth bore has always felt like an awkward magazine perk, but that's also a barrel. So maybe they're just talking about like gun perks in general as when they refer to magazine perks, not just specifically the magazine. But I agree, it's kind of weird.
It's so confusing.
So they increased the spread angle scale from 0.95 to 0.625. Sorry, 0.9625 on full choke, and small bore is getting a reduced spread angle from 1.1 to 1.075. They say Desperado is a strong perk in its current form, but they'd like to see it put on more weapons without breaking PvP. With this adjustment is still strong, but has more utility for PvE, and it can be applied to pulse rifle subfamilies. What is happening over there?
Oh, sorry, my fan. I forgot it was on.
Yeah, I'm just like, it literally sounded like you just dove into a dryer. I'm just like, wait, what's happening? Are we going through the car wash? Oh. So for Desperado, they increased the recovery scaler from 0.415 to 0.7. They reduced the duration from 7 seconds to 6 seconds, and they removed the PvE damage penalty.
I didn't know there was a damage penalty.
Yeah. So the air assault was shelved a long time ago, but adding the Airborne Effectiveness stat gave us the opportunity to turn it into a perk that actually does what it says on the description. With this change, the Airborne Gunplay, while wounded, will be much more effective. So Rebuilt now grants up to 60 Airborne Effectiveness stat when wounded. It's same trigger conditions as the Eye of the Storm perk. So Mulligan was never strong enough to warrant it being picked previously. So they increased the chance to return ammo on a miss from 20% to 35% on primary ammos, and it's been unchanged on special and heavy.
Just be careful. I don't want Revoker 2.0 on my hands.
Well, it's unchanged on special and heavy.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Yeah, like that, it's meaningless to me. Like, the only thing I want Mulligan on is
a
machine gun. So. Yeah.
Why would you want it on? Yeah, like, I don't know. Like, why would you want it on a regular? But I'm saying, why would you want it on an assault rifle or something? Like, that doesn't make any sense.
I don't know, if you get subsistence and Mulligan with a big clip, you can just potentially just keep shooting for days.
Like, okay, yeah.
I guess.
But
well, why not?
I don't know.
So they say,
why not? Why are we scared of that?
I don't know. They say compulsive reloader shipped a little weak, so they increased the reload stat from 40 to 50 and added a 0.95 times reload animation. Nope. I mean, that it was literally built for me because I am a compulsive reloader and I'm still not going to use it. So.
Yeah, I'm not going to use it.
Adagio was allowing for one-hit body shot kill with slug shotguns. While this is still possible with other perks such as Swashbuckler, the investment required to trigger the perk is much too low for that power bump. So with this change to the slug shotgun, and Adagio will be less of a